Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. We are going to start in just a few moments. And in the meantime, just so we can all get acquainted with one another, as is customary for a Simpson-Scarborough webinar, please use the chat function. Just input your name, which institution you're from, and slot that into the chat so we can all say hi. We will be starting in just a couple of minutes. Great, we've got people from all over. I can see in the chat, we've got Morgan State University, Butler, everywhere, San Francisco, amazing. And with the chat function as well, there's two options for chatting. You can either chat just to the hosts and panelists, or you can chat to everyone. So if you're introducing yourselves, make sure you select everyone. If you just want to speak to the hosts and panelists and, have some one-on-one messaging with us, then you can use that as well. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to kickstart the webinar. So welcome, everyone. It's incredible to see so many of you joining us today. We know there's no shortage of things to do on your to-do list, so we're grateful that you've chosen to spend the next 45 minutes with us today. My name is Murray Simpson. I am the Vice President of Growth at SimpsonScarborough, and I have the privilege of co-presenting Chapter 3 of our CMO study, all focused on websites. Please feel free to use the chat function throughout the session today. We did have over 600 signups, so please do use that chat function to connect with others in the sector and talk about common trends, challenges. And if you have a question that you want answered by our team, please use the Q&A function, and we have some dedicated time for that at the end. Additionally, we have created a new hub for this year's CMO study, which you can visit on our website. So like I said earlier, this is the third chapter. And if you missed the first two chapters on budgets and staffing and job satisfaction, you can catch them online. Just go through to the website. You can download the full reports, as well as signing up for any upcoming events. As for today, I am co-hosting with the fabulous Lex Haid, who is our AVP of Digital. Bob Rafferty, our Executive Vice President, will be here for the Q&A. And our Vice President of Industry Research, Meredith Simpson, will also be active in the chat for any methodology questions you may have. So we're really going to just jump into this year's respondents. All data in our report comes from four-year not-for-profit institutions. We've been doing this study for about 10 years now, and this year we had our highest ever responses with 268 institutions taking part. Additionally, this year, 53% of respondents were in their first CMO equivalent role, and 23% had new presidents. So there really is this unmistakable feeling of newness in the data and in the sector, which is really exciting. But we're going to start by looking at the headline data from our 2021 study to see where we were. So we're going back in time. In our specific MarTech study with CMOs and IT departments, we found that 56% of respondents stated that their website was not part of the institution's strategic plan. And 42% had no plans to modernize the user experience in their next .edu redesign. So despite the website being one of the most important assets, we did think at the time, why do institutions not treat it as such? And we stated back in 2021 that senior leadership need to invest in our website. In that study, we found so many examples of institutions whose CMS systems don't integrate with other platforms. We found an even larger number of institutions claiming that their website reporting wasn't being used to tell them anything about their audiences, and some websites having hundreds of contributors. So it's not really a surprise that our websites were becoming more like museums. So did it happen? Since 2021, are leadership investing more? And have we moved the needle on bringing cohesion to our websites? Now, based on this year's data, the answer is not really. Unfortunately, whilst there have been some movements in the right direction, our websites are still fractured. There are four main reasons which I'll highlight now, and we'll dig into this data alongside our points of view throughout the webinar. I'm going to run through these as a kind of summary and an intro to the rest of the content. And the first reason for this fractured nature is budgets. Investment is not going up at the same rate as it was in 2021. In 2021, 38% of institutions said they would invest more money in web, and this year that increase was at 34%. We know from this year's data that budgets are being spent on digital advertising over web development. And if that's the case at your institution, are you paying to drive traffic to a website that isn't giving a great experience? I'll dive into more of this data in the first part of the webinar. The second reason why our websites are still fractured is that Gen Z are changing. We have seen students using AI to research institutions in place of the website. And if 42% of you are not planning to modernize the user experience in the next redesign, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time, money, and resources. So Lex will cover more on Gen Z in the second part of the webinar, exploring more of the specifics into how they're changing and what you need to do in response. The third reason is that we have so many roles that remain unfilled, mostly UX and SEO. And without these people, we run the risk of websites that aren't built with the user experience in mind and pages that don't meet SEO best practice. And I'm sure you all know both of those two things are big no-nos when it comes to web performance. So Lex will also cover this in the third and final part of our webinar, alongside why these roles are so hard to fill. And then finally, leadership don't care. Well, maybe that is a bit harsh. I'm sure our leaders do care about us and what we do. At least that's what we hope, right? So maybe I'll rephrase. Maybe leadership don't understand. And part of our job, and I'm sure part of our daily struggle, is getting people internally to care as much as we do. But it starts with us, and with 45% of us not reporting to leadership on digital performance, how are we consistently highlighting the importance of our websites and the wider role they have in our institutions? So we do have some initial thought starters on how you can get leadership to care later in this webinar, as well as a full chapter on measurement to conclude our CMO study with chapter 4. So whilst we will cover those 4 key findings from this year's study, we also wanted to get your thoughts. So we actually surveyed the attendees of this webinar, and 430 of you responded. We asked what your biggest website challenge is, and the overwhelming majority of you said it was to do with governance, which I'm sure may be a root issue behind many of our findings. Many of you alluded to the dysfunctional management of your sites. With a lacking emphasis on digital strategy, there's bloated content, there's duplicate pages, and serious cleanup to do. So this led us to the question of why. And we'll start with a theory, and we'll start with an example from outside of sector. Let's start with Ford, the car manufacturer. So a little exercise, close your eyes on your campus, take a deep breath, and imagine a world where you are an engineer at Ford. The president has tasked you with telling the story of the car models you designed, and you're so excited. You know all the minutiae of the car. You can't wait to tell everyone about every intricate detail because what you've built is so special and unique that everyone must know your model of car is the best. And you could argue an engineer is much like an academic at a university. They're the expert in their field. Now, guess what? The president has asked 80 other engineers to do the same and have free rein to post it up on the Ford website. Now, if that happened, it would look a little something like this. Everyone going off on their own tangent, focusing on their opinions and marketing messaging that honestly reads as well as a confusing jigsaw. Now, Ford doesn't have this issue. Their marketing team control the website and they utilize the engineers as subject matter experts to get the insights they need to tell a consistent brand story. Because when an individual action overshadows collective goals, our audiences are the ones that get left behind. So why do we forget about our audiences? It doesn't happen in other industries. Let's look at the MacBook Pro. This is an example of what it may look like if the engineers wrote the website. They would be thrilled to discuss the tech under the hood, the memory architecture, or the machine learning capabilities of the chip. They could potentially spend several web pages explaining the advantages of things that I have never even heard of. And whilst these details are fascinating from a technical standpoint, they might miss the mark with the broader consumer base who are interested in what the laptop can do for them day to day. You know, smoother video editing, faster software performance, or the all-important battery life. And this example just highlights why website governance is so important, because it actually keeps us focused on our markets and not ourselves. So why is the user experience not prioritized in higher ed? Well, we do have a lot of theories, but ultimately the decentralized nature of our institutions, the lack of resources, and leadership not understanding are all major contributing factors. So we have to make a bigger case this year. We have to show everyone that the website experience actually matters. And that's why this is our first insight of the day. And it's our job to show all stakeholders internally that this is true. So our first insight is around that earlier point on governance. And the main question here is whether a shared governance structure makes things better or worse. And the reality is, I mean, for us on institutions, like there is so much content needed on a university website. This is not an e-commerce site with 20 products, right? These are some of the largest investments someone may ever make in their life. And when you layer in the fact that they are often a shared asset, content production sometimes feels like an impossible task. And that's really been made worse this year because investing in content creation has slowed down. In 2021, 35% of you said that content investment is going up. In 2023, 31% of you said content investment is going up. So that's a drop of 4%. And we thought in the years after the pandemic, institutions would realize the importance of having students on campus and use that for content generation. But it seems that's not happening. So if investment's going down, we have no other choice but to rely on a shared governance strategy because we're not getting the means to actually build the content we need. And until this investment is addressed, we may run the risk of continuing to operate in that decentralized fashion, because in theory, it's better to have some content than outdated content, right? I'm sure there's many people in here, if we were to look on your websites, I'm sure there's stuff that's on there that's out of date. And that is a real fear for us, right? But that doesn't mean it's the right solution. If we accept this, we're basically saying to the president that it's fine for those 80 engineers or academics to update their own pages. And if we do that, we're actually creating a disservice to our audiences. We need to work with presidents and CFOs to clarify ownership of the .edu and request the right budgets to sustain content development. So we wanted to do a little client spotlight here from our partners at Creighton University. And here is an example of how different departments, in this case, academic schools and colleges, can vary visually, tonally, and strategically when governed by subject matter experts on their own subdomains. Now, visually, these all look different. Without consistent UX patterns, you can see the School of Pharmacy and Professional Education have side navigations, whilst Graduate and Business School do not. Tonally, they're all written in a different way, inconsistent with the tone of voice across the institutional areas. And strategically, they don't consistently follow best practice for lead generation or conversion rates. This disparity may also be true for other units like advancement or admissions or academic departments. Oh, skipped a slide. There we go. So after doing a governance strategy and web implementation project, here's that same website after Creighton invested in centralizing those disparate subdomains. And this shift in perspective of governance and workflow also actually created a dedicated web staff for the university born out of the redesign project. And this type of staffing investment has led to maintaining a consistent user experience with high quality on-brand content across the entire website. And I think that buy-in of governance and that need to be able to have a strong UX customer student-centric model on websites, this is one way in which that can be achieved. So we just touched on how decreases in content production can cause governance issues, but how about the budgets that are being invested in the .edu itself? And there really is a balance to strike here, and very often digital gets lumped as one, but we have to balance all aspects of digital. So we dived into three figures: content creation, which we just covered, digital advertising, and website production. And the data does tell a really interesting story. 45% of institutions have increased their budgets for digital advertisements versus website design, which had an increase of 32%. Looking at the qualitative data that we received, CMOs are reportedly saying that most of their budget goes towards the actual buy versus the web experience itself. And we've been analyzing advertising metrics across the market for years now. And we believe this to be one of the major reasons institutions are seeing a sharp increase in their cost per leads. And throwing more money at media doesn't mean you'll get enrollments. And driving traffic to a poor website could even cause a bad brand experience, lowering trust in your brand. But very often, leadership don't understand this. Dollars spent on paid media are perceived to have a greater ROI than web developments. And, the ROI on media can be seen more quickly. And the university website, on the other hand, has a longer time to pay off, and it's more complicated to execute. And that's why it's so important to nail your reporting down. We have to ensure that leadership understand how a user-centric website actually reduces the cost per lead and in turn, the cost of acquisition. Which leads us really neatly into our last point in justifying why the website experience matters, and that's reporting. We have a largely content-focused audience who demand relevant and engaging digital experience, but institutions are not fully harnessing their analytics, which means they're either using their gut instinct to make decisions or are being led by internal stakeholders. And those two could be two huge mistakes we make when it comes to website design. And part of this is because we aren't telling leadership that story. And marketing and branding has always been a really big struggle to justify, either because the institution is so focused on the next intake, or they just think about the immediate wins. Now, 45% of you said you don't report to leadership on digital analytics. And honestly, those metrics are only becoming more and more difficult to measure. We are really entering a privacy-centric world now. And the timeline you see here is reflective of just that. You can see quite the journey we've had, starting with GDPR in 2018, then CCPA in 2020, and looking ahead, we've now got Google's consent mode coming up this year, which limits our cookie data. and then the NJPA Act in 2025. Essentially, students, consumers, they don't want to give you their data. And we have to adopt far more in the realm of first-party data capture and different methods of attribution to be able to even justify why these things are important. And as CMOs, we have so many initiatives, and we need to make the data relevant by creating associations of all these metrics that we use day to day with institutional goals. So if you don't have established metrics for awareness, for reputation, for perception, then we need to talk, because all the data points on your website contribute towards these key areas. And if done right, we can make our reporting part of a bigger story about the investment the university is making in marketing. Awareness, reputation, and perception are things that every executive can understand. And we need to tell them how the website is moving the needle in those categories. And actually use the website as the core driver for your success in those areas. But that would be an hour-long conversation to delve into that. So we're going to go deeper into that in chapter 4, which is our closing chapter. Very emotional. These chapters have been great. That will be our last chapter, which you'll be able to sign up to on the CMO Lab, CMO Study website. So great. We know we need to measure our results, but are we generating content that's actually going to benefit our performance? And how are we getting stakeholder buy-in to invest in new content? We mentioned earlier the changing nature of Gen Z and how to respond to their needs. And the second headline insights from this year's survey is not just about generating the right content, but high quality content. So to dig into this further, I'll hand it over to our co-presenter today, Lex.
Thank you so much, Marie. Okay, so what we know to be true is that high quality content is king, especially for prospective students. And higher ed can significantly enhance storytelling and engagement by investing in diverse content forms on both the website and paid platforms. We need to think about a website as one point in a broader ecosystem of content. And then the content that you curate on your website needs to pay off what users discover on other platforms. You can see here that Gen Z indexes highest on discovering new brands by ads that play online before videos start. So what does that mean exactly? That means that younger audiences are learning about new brands through ads playing in between their scrolling on platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. What this signals to us then is that there's a shift in immersive storytelling that's going to captivate those younger prospective students. Higher Ed CMOs should invest in content on their website and content that will appear on paid platforms. And that content should educate, it should entertain, it should inform. It wants to mirror the content-driven discovery platforms that are being favored by Gen Z. So let's walk through a real-world example of this and how paid ads discovered on different platforms pay off the campaign landing page that they're driving to. And I'll show that campaign landing page here in a second, but this example here is TikTok. So imagine you're a prospective student scrolling your For You page, and in between those personalized videos that you're getting served up, you see this ad for UM. And the ad doesn't overtly scream university, right? It isn't stuffy, it isn't overly academic. It's in line with the broader ecosystem of UM's content strategy, and it's tailored to the specific channel and audience that it's being served to. It's also visually and verbally consistent with that campaign landing page that I alluded to earlier. So let's show another example here. Let's show a paid ad on Snapchat and how a younger audience could stumble upon a new brand this way. Or let's show an example of a paid ad on Instagram and how a younger audience could then discover that same campaign and get driven to that same landing page. Content isn't just text, right? It's videos, it's images that are going to build up Montana's story. And ultimately, it's going to enhance the person's experience with the brand. The campaign landing page that each of these three examples drove to is consistent visually, verbally, and strategically. So from one touch point to the next touch point, there's this seamless user experience. There's a through line between these two different touch points as the user's moving through them. And the messaging on the ads mirror the messaging on the landing page. This makes the person who clicked the ad impressed by the destination that they landed on and ultimately impressed by the university, right? And don't forget that the university's main website, it's eventually going to get visited by the same person too in their broader user journey. That main website is just a later stage in the journey. It's a later stage in the marketing funnel. But again, it's crucial that the content on your website and the content that will appear on paid platforms and these campaign landing pages is all high quality and it's all cohesive. Younger generations are also more likely to use video and image-based platforms like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram for search, more so than traditional search options like search engines. So it's critical that we start to prioritize SEO and optimize video and image content for searchability. And while traditional text-based search might be on the decline for younger audiences compared with platform searches on TikTok and YouTube, the same strategies that we know from SEO can still be applied more broadly. So create a budget to produce high quality, visually heavy content with a keyword strategy, and invest in content strategies that can be applied broadly to TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, just to name a few there. And be more than creative when you're applying these strategies, right? And that means surface content through direct search or algorithmic associations. Higher Ed really needs to make a presence on all of those platforms as representative and high quality as the content on their own website. Because content goes beyond the university website, and highly visual content is what's going to build an audience faster than anything. So it's critical to prioritize SEO and optimize video and image content for searchability, especially for those prospective students. 30% of Gen Z used the Discover page or search TikTok in the last month for something that they were trying to find. And we need to start building awareness that SEO and the concept of search are bigger than Google. So really, the point that we're trying to make here is that content's an investment. We must align the website content in higher education with the discoveries that are made on these other platforms if we want to have this seamless user experience. This means that we must develop a comprehensive content strategy that adapts to different channels to achieve a cohesive surround sound effect that Murray was talking about earlier. And most importantly, the content should be atomized for each channel, and it must suit the preferences for each audience segment that is going to be using that channel. Gen Z is more likely to want personalized recommendations. And as early adopters of AI, the technology is raising the expectations of what they want from search engines. 31% of Gen Z audiences said that they've used AI platforms and chatbots to find information on the internet. And right now, universities should be investing in cleaning up their public website content to make it more accessible by AI. And I know that sounds like a really prudent use of resources, right? But it's a practical way to navigate the emergence of AI and ensure that a prospective student, when they're querying something, they're being returned with relevant and accurate information. So when they're searching ChatGPT for something as specific as an application deadline for a graduate degree with very specific requirements, you want to make sure that they're getting the most up-to-date information. You don't want ChatGPT or another AI to scrape outdated content on your website that someone forgot to delete or update. That goes back to the governance that Murray was talking about earlier. So that's why cleaning up your web content is a crucial first step in navigating the emergence of AI. Look, interacting with AI is going to be as ubiquitous as mobile browsing became 15 years ago. Institutions can position themselves favorably within a digital-first world by strategically engaging with AI technology to enhance their visibility and reputation. So while we're talking about cleaning up your website content as being one way to navigate this emerging technology, it's certainly not the fastest, and it's not the only thing that you should be doing to prepare, right? Another way to impact students who might be looking for you this year on AI-enabled platforms is to harness the AI algorithms that are already being used on social and video platforms. Unfortunately, that's going to be a pay-to-play, like the paid ads that we were showing earlier, but you can start to identify which discovery platforms are using AI and make sure you're taking a slice out of that pie. This brings us to our third insight now. Which is that higher ed demands sophisticated interactions within their tech stack. Our data clearly shows a disparity that's happening in institutions investing in integrating their CRM and their CMS to personalize their content across their website. Overall, we found that 70% of institutions are not utilizing their MarTech to personalize web content. But in this instance here, what does personalization really mean? Is it that users who click through from an email to a website see personalized content based on an interest that they selected in a form or a page that they previously visited on your website? Honestly, we want to talk with all of you more during the Q&A section to find out how you're personalizing content on your website using your CRM data. And because in this instance, our specific question in the CMO study has led to more questions than answers when it comes to what personalization means to higher ed institutions. One insight that we do have, however, is that smaller and mid-sized universities are under greater threat than larger universities and need to make investments in tailored interactions to demonstrate differentiation. Those who are making the investment are seeing a payoff because they're better positioned to meet the expectations of this content-focused younger generation. This potentially gives them an edge in student engagement and satisfaction as well. So start building small personalization strategies tailored to your audiences. What data do you have confidence in that can create meaningful user journeys? Is geography meaningful to your university? For some it is, and for some it isn't. If it isn't, don't focus there, right? Do you have reliable academic preference data in your CRM? If you do, start there. And if you don't, then stay away from it, right? There's nothing worse than recommending a computer science program to a nursing student. Everyone here knows that integrating a CMS and a CRM is strategically complicated, but the good news is that the technology is a lower barrier than it was a few years ago. However, we want to say this with an extreme amount of caution because tailored interactions require a lot of segmentation and a much deeper understanding of how each audience fits within this broader content ecosystem. So when it's done well, the perception of the student experience goes up. And when it's done poorly, trust can be lost. So there's a lot at risk here. Start small and create achievable personalization plans to build a good foundation. And most importantly, don't over-engineer something for the sake of being cutting edge. Only implement sophisticated interactions in moments in the user journey that could benefit from personalization. And this brings us to our fourth insight of our study then, which is that digital marketing and web development staffing matters. And Marie touched on this a little bit in the beginning. So overall, we know that larger institutions are more likely to have specialized in-house roles related to digital marketing and web development. This could indicate a broader capacity to manage sophisticated marketing strategies and web experiences. Smaller institutions, they may have fewer specialized roles, and they may potentially be relying more on generalist or external partnerships for these functions. But the data here shows that there are some gaps, like we suspected, particularly in UX or user experience, which is essential for a comprehensive digital strategy. If we want to align with the expectations and behaviors of a content-focused generation, we must prioritize UX. UX positions are imperative to make sure there's consistency among the entire digital ecosystem. There's also a gap in SEO as well, but our recommendation is that SEO positions should be contracted out to a specialty shop, and content, that should really be an extension of your marketing team. So smaller institutions, they may need to address these gaps to stay competitive in attracting and engaging their target audiences. Right now, it's really hard to find specialized talent without paying a premium. CMOs can get more value out of agency partnerships than waste time and money on failed searches for digital leadership or even producer level positions. And look, I recognize that that sounds pretty self-serving, but it isn't. You can contract fractional time from an agency to advance your current goals, and that's much harder to do with a full-time employee. But the value of investing in UX and content, it pays off dividends for your website and for all of those other touch points in your broader digital ecosystem of the prospective student's journey. If we prioritize UX, UI, and content, we elevate the prospective student's perception of the university. And when there's a gap in expertise in-house or even a miss in contracting out this expertise, each section of the website runs the risk of varying visually, verbally, and strategically, like this example shown here. So visually, the homepage, the about page, the admission page, and the student life page, they all look different, right? The admission page has a large hero and it has this side navigation, and the about page and the student life page have different layouts. And they're all written in a different way, inconsistent with their voice and tone across the different pages. And strategically, these pages don't consistently follow best practices for usability, wayfinding, and even content. And all of these primary landing pages are likely going to be visited by a prospective student in their journey to learn more about your university. You don't want to leave them with a bad taste in their mouth. Now here's those same web pages. Here's that homepage, the about page, the admission page, and that student life page after consulting with UX, UI, and content experts. And visually now, these pages have clear hierarchy, clear scale, and they follow UX best practices to generate leads and to be easy to use. Verbally, all of the pages deepen the university's story of place and purpose while still remaining scannable. And strategically, they all focus on the prospective student audience and make sure that they're a destination to market the university's authentic self and what it has to offer. So this shift in perspective to prioritize UX, UI, and content created a consistent user experience with high quality on-brand content across the entire website. All right, in conclusion here, I want to leave you with 3 key actionable takeaways. First and foremost, a centralized governance approach will enhance the user experience, resulting in more trust and higher credibility of your university. Second, tailoring high-quality content for each audience and channel maintains a cohesive verbal and visual message across all of your touch points. And this matters because each step in your larger digital ecosystem is then on brand, and it leaves the person feeling good about their interactions with the university. So the ad that they see should match the landing page that it drives to, and it should match the university's website when that same person visits it later, when they're further down the marketing funnel. And finally, digital expertise matters if you want to create and maintain digital assets and website properties in a seamless way. This expertise enables the university to strategically leverage digital platforms to communicate its message, engage with its audience, and stay ahead in an increasingly competitive digital landscape. Ultimately here, it allows the university to maintain relevance, attract attention, and achieve its broader strategic goals. Okay, I know that that was a lot of information here, so I'm going to hand it back to Murray to close us out.
Great. So we hope the content covered today helps give you some learnings that you can take back to your institution to enhance your web strategies. And we are cautiously optimistic that we'll see websites become more prominent in leadership's minds and really get the resources and attention they need to survive. And again, I'll just say it's our responsibility to try to move the needle on this. And if you need any other further insights from Simpson-Scarborough, connect with us on LinkedIn, reach out on our website. We can talk about this for days. There is still so much to talk about as it pertains to this study. And as mentioned earlier, we have one chapter left. This year's story concludes on May 16th, where we'll be hosting a webinar on measurement, including the ability to measure brand impact, ROI metrics, and data to take to your president beyond just enrollment and rankings. You'll be receiving the link for the webinar and the full report on today's content via email by end of day today. And one last plug, I promise. Finally, on June the 11th to June the 13th, we'll be holding our CMO Lab event in Pittsburgh. You can find the link to the event on our homepage. Early bird registration has completely filled up and we have limited spaces left. And this event is exclusively for lead marketers at higher ed institutions. And it's really a place to connect with your peers, like the ones you met in the chat today, and the wider higher ed community. It's a 2-day event, and you'll hear from incredible speakers enhancing leadership, unlocking strategies for improving brand, and providing those intentional, structured networking opportunities with other CMOs. So take a look at our website and register, and we would love to meet you there. So now we are entering the Q&A portion of the webinar. We are joined by Bob, our Executive Vice President at Simpson-Scarborough, and a partner who founded the digital services at Simpson-Scarborough and has worked with dozens of institutions, helping solve many of the challenges we discussed today. So welcome to the chat, Bob. And I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, which did work, I think. And we will start by going through some of the questions.
I thought a good place to start, there's 3 questions in the chat about AI. And I was hoping we could share the link to the AI webinar we did 6 months ago or so. That's going to be a deeper dive. But all the questions in the chat on this topic are generally pertaining to the point around how much is your current website content impacting what AI models may be learning about you, and where should you be focused from a content perspective to clean that up. So the broadest answer to that is that yes, the current content on your site is impacting what different large language models know about your university. In the consideration of that, I think we have to recognize that it's very early for AI in terms of the knowledge attainment within each of those models. So the open web essentially is most of the content that those models have been ingesting over the last several years. The future, I think, is much more around where is AI going from an angle that might be more useful for your audiences or for your university overall. There's a real probably near-term opportunity to start considering how to segment content, internal and external, considering where an intranet might be a space for you to start to house a lot of that internal content, because you'll be able to access AI technology that can specifically focus on that content and be a useful tool for those audiences that are only accessing or need access to that internal information. So that's one place we'd be focused. The real correlation between SEO and AI, which is also noted here, is still, I think, being understood. There's likely some good resources out there to learn more about that. But by and large, what you're doing for SEO, you're optimizing for search. You're not optimizing for AI. The real way that those models are built just doesn't have a direct one-to-one. So that's going to take care of a couple of these answers. Lex, there was a conversation in the chat about homepage content and audience.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one.
priorities. Yeah. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that, about those competing interests that occur on the homepage?
Yeah, there's a lot of competing interests on the homepage, right? The homepage serves traditionally and historically a lot of different audiences. And I believe I remember seeing the question talking about leadership viewing the homepage as almost a gateway page that navigates you deeper into all of the other places within the site, or is appeasing a bunch of different user needs. And we've been thinking about the homepage slightly different here at SimpsonScarborough, and more of a cover of a book and a place for you to be able to tell your university's story, really reinforce the things that are important from a sense of place, purpose, and how you are differentiating between the other universities. So it's become much more of a storytelling experience, an immersive storytelling experience that aligns with the preferences of Gen Z, and it's used as a moment to impress everyone. The homepage is not necessarily a destination that everyone is going to visit in their journey, particularly audiences that are internal or have been there before. They're going to go directly to those pages, either through organic search or direct search. The people who are coming to visit your homepage are oftentimes first-time visitors, those prospective students and families who are vetting if the university is a right fit for them. And so that homepage needs to really be a moment to impress and elevate your university's experience.
Great. Another question here in the chat around how do you approach crucial partners, I think is an interesting one, because since a website is a shared asset, those conversations tend to be most successful from our perspective when you're offering those audiences something. So if you're looking to get more time investment or financial investment from subunits, being able to come to them with a plan and a strategy is usually a way to bring them along with you. There can also be other incentives there around, your ability to help with various aspects of either design or content development for them. But generally, that kind of building of relationships further downstream needs to come with some level of offer in order for it to be successful. I'm just reading this next question here about centralized governance. Yeah, that's a pretty common experience, and the way many universities have governance set up from our perspective, which we shared in this report, is that it's just too broad. The more you can rein in who actually has ownership and authority, the more likely you're going to start to build consensus and build an experience that feels unified.
Hey, Bob and Lex, there's a couple of questions around AI algorithms and SEO strategies. So Lex, one of them was about whether we can explain more about how to harness current AI algorithms within an SEO strategy to engage with AI technology. And I know you spoke earlier in the webinar itself around SEO expertise on campus and off campus and how those roles are quite hard to fill. What would you respond to that question, and what do you think institutions should do with their SEO strategies with AI coming on board?
Yeah, I think that this is really going to be something where we need to be thinking about our brand platforms and our non-branded keywords that are going to be using and leveraging when it comes to search. So what is that sort of larger content ecosystem that we've been talking about? And how does it then ladder up to your brand platform? And thinking about leveraging those keywords when it comes to crafting content for these individual platforms themselves. Bob, I'm sure you probably have a little bit more that you would add on to that too.
And I think that relates to just what my opening remarks were here, that there's a lot of opportunity there, but I'd be thinking about your SEO strategy independent of your AI strategy.
And then Bob, did you want me to read out the question that's come through on the Q&A?
Yeah, it's another AI one, and I think that this just continues to reinforce what this narrative has been, which is that those AI models they're just going to ingest what content you have out there. So there's probably some analogies, I guess, you could work through with some of your stakeholders who might not understand the technology itself. Considering if an unknown audience came to that website, regardless of whether it's AI or not, what would their experience be? What would they be learning from it, right? So if the answer is that a real human would come and find false information or be misled about what might exist in that part of the site, the same is going to be accurate and the same experience that an AI model would have.
Great. We've also had another question around that shared governance topic, right? How do we take the institution on a journey where governance is decentralized? I know you've both, Lex and Bob, been involved in that process with institutions, and there's committees, there's workshops. It really is a journey. Can you just talk to that experience and any hurdles that people might need to look out for?
Yeah, I think where I'd start that consideration is that in central marketing or even in IT, at a lot of universities, we find that the starting line for that conversation is around assumptions. And one of those assumptions is that those stakeholders that live deeper in the organization want to be authoring or maintaining the content on their sites. That may or may not be true. What we found is that the shift, let's say, over the last 15 years is a very steep curve away from those deeper parts of the university really wanting to own or maintain the content on their current site. You have some instances where you may have someone in an administrative role who they feel like this is a big part of their job and they want to hold on to that. But those tend to be outliers. Usually when you're talking to a school or a college or an administrative unit who isn't regularly updating audiences through their website, they're more working on an annual routine. If you can provide the resources to do that work for them, you're going to have an opportunity to bring them along with you into a new model that might serve the university from a larger, more focused perspective. And there's also, I think, when you go the other direction, when you're working across from the CMO through the senior leadership team, the ability to decrease time and reallocate those staff resources to other work that might be more important is a way to build alignment at that senior most level, that it's just very expensive to distribute broad ownership across many different subunits. And even if you can't get your senior leadership behind the idea that the voice and tone and the consistency of the brand overall is important, you can often get them behind the financial objective around reallocating individuals' times.
Yeah, and I would just add there too that centralizing governance doesn't mean you're completely taking away any sort of collaboration with your subject matter experts. This is where workflow really comes in, and creating the right workflow for those former owners or the owners that you're somewhat trying to get to relinquish control, if that is your problem, to be able to still edit their pages, but then it goes through a workflow within either central marketing or IT to then approve those content changes and really reinforce the brand guidelines there, making sure that everything is consistent from a verbal, visual, and total perspective.
Yeah.
I would just
there's a related question in the chat here just about archiving content, which I think is part of this, like, how do you govern content overall? And the consideration here is, there are individuals who believe that long-term academic content is a record of their achievement or of their academic portfolio overall. And our point of view on that is that there can be a place for that content, but it's often in the LMS and that it's not the public website. There's really great LMS tools out there. Every university is invested in some platform, and that's really the place for that. And I'm saying that, but I also want to note that having strong visibility for faculty, for their academic background, accomplishments, etc., is valuable content. You recruit students, you recruit faculty to the departments through the visibility of that content, but it generally does not need to get as deep and granular as the example here listed in the chat. Like that kind of content is just content that is not in the CMS. It should be in the LMS. It's a resource for current students. If you have a faculty member who has a big external audience, let's say, because of the research that they do, or they're a known speaker, they often have their own websites at this point. There was this whole phase in time where the university wanted to offer, and many still do, spaces to host deep faculty websites, but the maintenance costs over time, that's very expensive, right? So depending on the size of your university, being able to encourage them to explore that kind of space on their own isn't a bad idea. That you're still going to get linking back to the main university site from their content, and if they want to have every syllabus going back to 1994, they can do that, and you don't have the overhead and the burden to maintain that.
Okay, I think we covered nearly all the questions that were in the Q&A, so thank you very much. Over the last many years, we've done quite a large number of governance strategies now for institutions, and I think what we're saying is it really isn't a one size fits all. There's going to be nuances at your institution, and that's partly why those strategies are so important and so interesting to work on. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining the webinar today. It's been great to see all the engagement in the chat. Please do go through to the SimpsonScarborough website or the CMO Study website, and you can sign up to the last chapter on measurement. And again, we just wanted to thank you all so much for your time. We will be emailing the full report and a recording of this webinar to those who attended, and I think even those who signed up but couldn't make it. So you will receive all the information shortly. So thank you very much. Thank you to our panel, to Bob, Lex, and Meredith for joining the chat. And of course to Carrie, who organized the webinar and made all of this happen. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.